Kong Confidential. I'm Jules Hannaford and I'm your host. I'm an Australian woman and I've been living in Hong Kong for many years. I'm a mother, a teacher, an author, and I want to share my wisdom and the wisdom of others with you. Thanks for joining me and I hope you enjoy the show. Hong Kong Confidential is brought to you by Teresa's Turkish Towels. Teresa imports the finest 100% Turkish cotton towels that dry very quickly, making them perfect for Hong Kong's humid climate. Say goodbye to the traditional smelly and stinky towels and try the colourful and fresh selections available online or in Teresa's Wan Chai store. Use the promo code CONFIDENTIAL online or mention this podcast when you visit in person to receive $100 off your entire order when you order 2 or more towels. With 100% satisfaction guaranteed or your money back, the only thing you've got to lose are the musty smells that permeate traditional terry towels. Visit www.hkturkish.com in order to get the address and directions to Teresa's semi-hidden location. Today I'm here with Robert. Hi Robert, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Great, thank you so much for joining me today. It's awesome to see you again. Robert, can you tell me a little bit about what it was like growing up in South Africa when you were young? What was your childhood like?
It was great. I grew up in Durban. It was a really safe, outdoorsy, sort of sleepy surfer town. My life was revolved around the neighborhood, the kids, school activities, swimming. Both at school was a big part of my life. Down days at the beach and so on were important to us then. Both my parents worked, so I was raised by a Zulu woman that I'd known since I was a toddler. So it was a great place to be.
And how was school for you when you were young?
I remember being a very happy-go-lucky kid. Primary school was a great place for me. I was happy. I didn't feel inhibited in any way. Sports, swimming was a big part of it. I suppose I wasn't playing rugby and cricket, which was important to at the time in South Africa, but I was still enjoying my school life. I suppose I never really pushed myself academically, but, I got by.
And did you fit in not being a rugby player?
I think things became a little more challenging when I got to high school. It's a lot more pressured and stressful environment where you're less protected from the diversity of humanity than you would be at a primary school. And also, I suppose, coupled with becoming more aware of myself, going into puberty, you just become a little more conscious of some of those things that I never really thought about before. And masculinity in South Africa was definitely celebrated. And if you didn't play rugby or cricket, you weren't really anybody. So I was aware of not really fitting in, not being one of the jocks, I suppose. But I never really had any issues. I wasn't challenged per se. I wasn't bullied physically at school. I may have been at the brunt of some charged comments and some hurtful words, but I think most kids at school are going to face that.
So you mentioned that when you hit puberty, you started to realise there were some changes and some things going on that meant you didn't quite fit in. Can you talk a little bit more about what did that look like?
Well, when I look back at it, I realised my attraction to men at the time, and I think the tensions arose by my feeling awkward about the fact that I was attracted to men and denying that in myself and trying to suppress it, I suppose, even though or believing it was a phase and I could grow out of it or live without it.
And is that something that then makes you think that you're unusual? Because did you have any gay role models or know any gay people? There was nothing going on in the media back in those days, was there?
No, I think that's one of the things which made it very difficult to come out in South Africa. It was there were no role models. I had no people that I knew of who were gay in my life. And gay people were a common object of ridicule and humor. Even in mainstream TV, the gay people were people that you laughed at.
Can you give me an example of what you're thinking of?
Well, I'm thinking of my parents are British and they watch British programs and enjoyed British humor. things like the Carry On series with Kenneth Williams being an obviously very camp and overtly gay man, being an icon of humor and someone that people laughed at.
And did you have Are You Being Served as well? Do you remember that television show?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's another British one with a lead character who was very camp and was laughed at as well. And even, did you have Bewitched? The TV? Okay, because Uncle Arthur was another one.
It was very limited TV back then. We had Shane and Bonanza, I think, were the only things we got for a long time.
Very primitive in South Africa. Did you have any concept of what homosexuality or being gay was at that age when you felt you were attracted to boys, or was it completely a foreign thing?
It was completely foreign.
Was that then quite scary? Or you must have felt quite alone.
It was very isolating. I managed to maintain very strong social circles and I had a lot of friends, but I did feel disconnected from them in the sense that there was something that I couldn't share and I couldn't really be myself or realize myself in some way.
Must have been so challenging. And how do you go about suppressing that kind of thing when you're young?
Well, at the time, I suppose I tried to pursue God as an option. I joined youth groups where maybe it allowed the development of sexuality to be delayed, or I could maintain some faith that there was some way that I could resolve these challenges or feelings that I had. But obviously it didn't.
No.
That doesn't work.
Yeah, sure. Was your family religious?
No, not really.
So you said you weren't bullied at school physically, but was there some verbal bullying?
Yes, people would call you derogatory words. I wasn't overtly gay when I was a child or at school, but just because I wasn't as masculine or sporty as the others, you would be the brunt of some, hurtful words.
Were they homophobic words or were they just more general bullying?
More general bullying. The only homophobic bullying I received was from my brother. I remember him once calling me a derogatory homophobic word, and I remember it like it was yesterday. It's just something that's burnt in my memory. I can see the place it happened. I can remember the smells. It's just very strange.
See, now that you've said that, that makes me recall bullying my younger brother, who is also gay and lives with his long-term partner in Sydney. They've been together for 18 years, and I used to call him Sissy Sam when I was younger, even though I didn't really know what being gay meant.
Yeah, or the impact of your words.
Yeah, or the impact of my words, and I feel really, really sorry for that. But on the flip side, I was the first person that he came out to, so I'm proud of that. Yeah, and he knew, I'd 100% embrace and accept him.
So much of it, that discrimination is ignorance. I think my brother didn't mean it and didn't know any better.
So can you tell me a bit about your coming out story and how that went?
I came out late. So all through university, I maintained a life that wasn't gay. And when I moved to Hong Kong, I started to feel more accepting of myself. And my parents were going to come over to visit. So I thought, well, this is a prime opportunity for me to tell them. And the trip got cancelled at the last minute. So then I got them on the phone, and they were both on the phone at the same time. And I told them that I was gay. I was more worried about my dad at the time, largely because these sorts of issues had never come up, and him being a man, and, I felt that might be more of an issue for him than for my mum. But it turns out my mum was the one who had at least the strongest reaction. She screamed down the phone, "No!" And I didn't hear from her for the rest of the conversation, whereas my dad said, well, we thought you were going to tell us you're getting married, which was really heartbreaking. But he said all the right things, that you're still our son and we love you and you want you to be safe and happy. And that was it, really.
I have the same parallel again. My brother came out late, in his late 20s. He also told my parents over the phone.
Oh,
and my mum also went into a bit of a meltdown, and my dad was very pragmatic and practical and was like, we love you, you're still the same kid you were yesterday, and, it doesn't matter. Yeah. And so there's a similar parallel again. Yeah. So it's very interesting. And, of course, they've really come around and 100% supportive and embrace both him and his partner. How are your mum and dad with you now?
Yeah, exactly. I think it took my mum a while to come to terms with it and understand, and I suppose give up the dreams that she had as a mum. But now they're my strongest advocates.
It's interesting you talk about the dreams that your mum had. That would have been you getting married and having children and all that sort of stuff. And that's something that you've actually done as a gay man, isn't it?
Yes, exactly.
So there you go. She didn't really lose those dreams at all. They just shifted.
Yeah, no, I think they're getting that. And our son brings so much joy to them, so it's good.
What was life like in Hong Kong in the early days? So did you come here still sort of in the closet? Is that a term that I can use?
Yes.
Is that okay?
So. I think we use it in our everyday parlance.
Okay,
so
good.
I was firmly in the closet.
Right. So what encouraged you to come out? Was it being far away from home?
Yes, I think so. Well, I think it goes back to the reasons that I left South Africa. I think this self-denial and this not realizing who I was led me to medicate myself with fairly toxic behaviors that was very self-destructive. And I think I felt that I needed to make an intervention. And coming to Hong Kong was that intervention, just to take me away from all of those things that I think would have not worked out well for me.
Are you talking about drugs and alcohol?
Drugs and alcohol,
right.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's what happens to a lot of young people in that situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of gay people as well who are, they do tend to turn to these sorts of aids to help them to dull the pain of not being able to be who they are.
Yeah, it's sad, isn't it? And so you came to Hong Kong and then you decided to come out, and I guess did you start with your friends and your lifestyle here?
Yes, a close friend of mine realized the pain that I'd been going through, and she said to me, "Have you ever thought about that you might be gay?" And her acceptance of it and just bringing it up as a conversation really got me thinking that maybe I was, or maybe this was something to look at more closely. And that was it, really. I think I started to explore my attractions, not for very long, because a couple of years after I arrived, I met my husband. But back in the day in Hong Kong, I think, much as they are now, I think gay people were not very empowered. They didn't really have a voice. The gay life went and took place behind doors.
And do you think there's any difference for living as a gay man in South Africa compared to Hong Kong? I mean, I know you haven't lived as a gay man in South Africa, but from your observation, is it any easier in either place?
You're right. I don't have much experience of being a gay man in South Africa, but from what I've seen, it's a very masculine society, very macho society, and I think it's perhaps a little less easy to be gay in some parts of South Africa than it is in Hong Kong, where people just turn the other head and let you get on with it without really engaging.
So when you say that people in Hong Kong turn their heads or they look the other way, do you think there's a sort of a stigma or a silence that goes along with LGBT issues, and perhaps that's something that it would be good if it was changing?
Yes, I think so. I think it is starting to change in Hong Kong, but I think there is a cultural precedent where these things are not spoken about, and LGBT people in China are disenfranchised by the fact that who they are is not acknowledged. In the media, LGBT issues are not really addressed in the Chinese media at all, except recently we saw a very high society gay marriage in Hong Kong, quite widely reported in the Chinese media, and that was the first time really that I'd ever seen a story like that.
Oh, that's awesome. So it's kind of groundbreaking.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Yeah, slowly. And it is, I think, on a global scale, it's step by step, isn't it?
Yeah.
Gay marriage is becoming legal in more countries, and there are more positive gay role models in the media and on television, and we're teaching it in schools, and we're raising awareness and tolerance and diversity is so important. So that's really good. Is it legal to be married in Hong Kong as a gay man?
No.
It's not?
No.
So are you technically not married in Hong Kong? But if you get married in Canada or America or wherever, you're obviously married. But that then doesn't stand in Hong Kong, or it's not recognised. It's not valid.
We have none of the rights of a married couple in Hong Kong. We can't tick the married box on any of the forms or claim any tax benefits from being married, or even attend the bed of our ailing spouses.
That's terrible, isn't it? But I'm hoping that raising awareness will lead to some sort of change in Hong Kong. And I know that the LGBTQ movement in Hong Kong is really growing, and that's fantastic. So how did you and your husband meet?
We met online.
Lovely.
Back in the day.
As apparently 1/3 of married couples do these days. It's not uncommon.
Back in the day, we met in a gay chat room. I don't even know if they exist anymore. And I clicked on someone that I thought would be my cup of tea, described himself as Sport HK, and that sort of rang a few bells for me, and then that was him. And we chatted for a long time, and we made a time to meet up, and we met outside Sogo 5 days anniversary from now.
Oh, really? How many years ago?
17 years.
Oh, wow. You've been together that long?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh, that's amazing. And where did you get married?
In Vietnam. So as a British citizen, we were allowed to get married in the consulate there.
And tell me a bit about your wedding. Did your family all come?
No. We just had a few close friends, some from Australia, some from Hong Kong, went over. So there were 5 or 6 of us, and it took place really in the consulate around a boardroom. I think we were one of the first, so it wasn't the elaborate fare that you can have now when you go to a consulate in Vietnam, for example. It was quite interesting. We looked at different countries around Asia where you could do it, and the only 2 countries that allowed the consulates to register civil partnerships at the time was Vietnam and the Philippines. And we thought, well, the Philippines is closer, and you actually have to live in the country for a certain period of time before you can register to get married. So we thought we would try that, and we wrote to them, and they said, oh, no, we don't do that. And I said, well, your website says that you do. And about 2 weeks later, they came back saying, oh, yes, we do that, but we've never done it before, but we'd really like to give it a go.
So you literally were the first. Yeah. That's amazing.
Well, that was the Philippines, and we said, well, sorry, we're going to do it in Vietnam because we'd already made the application, but we were one of the first to do it in Vietnam.
Groundbreakers. That's so cool. Your partner is Chinese, I believe?
Yes.
Does he have a coming out story, and how are his family with him?
He doesn't really have a coming out story.
Okay.
I think he leads a very separate life. I think he has told his parents, but they haven't really acknowledged or spoken about it since. I think many gay men in Hong Kong don't even try to come out to their families purely because it's not spoken about or not recognized and accepted in any way. I think there's still a lot of discrimination in many traditional establishments in Hong Kong, and people feel that they will be compromised, their careers will be compromised if they come out as gay.
And do you think that's actually the case, or do you think that's just a perception?
I think it's the case, and it's also quite tiring coming out. People think, oh, you come out once and that's it, it's all over. But in reality, you're coming out every day, and you're constantly faced with decisions about, do I come out to this client? Is this going to affect our relationship? Should I just accept the fact that he keeps referring to my wife and assuming that I'm straight? It's an ongoing thing.
See, it's interesting that you've said that, because that's not something that ever would cross my mind in anything that I do, to come out that I'm straight.
Yeah, no.
So, yeah, I hadn't considered that these are things you might have to think of so often.
Yeah, every day, even at now, after being out for so long, I still think about whether me acknowledging that I'm gay or speaking about my spouse as being a him rather than a her is going to affect my business or going to affect my exchange with someone in a shop. It's just bizarre.
And that's so, I don't know what the word is, but the one that comes to mind is sad.
Yeah.
It feels sad that you have to think about these things, and that's something that you have to consider in your daily life, when it just should be, everything should be just considered as acceptable and the way things are. Yeah. I don't even want to say the word normal, because what is normal? Do you know what I mean? It's not It's not normalizing stuff. It's really about just acceptance and everybody being authentic and being themselves. And that's the message I think that we want to get across to people. And, you know, I think for people who aren't gay, like myself, it's hard to imagine the struggle and the issues that you face daily.
Yeah.
Have you always wanted to be a father? Was that something that you've always really? So from what age did you know?
I think I've always wanted to be a father, and I think probably from the time I left school, I wanted to have a kid, and it was just a matter of time, really.
So you always knew that you would. And wanting to have a child, did that hinder your ability to accept your homosexuality, or does that play any role in the fact that you came out later on, or is it just it's a separate issue and you knew you would do it?
I hadn't really thought about it before, but I suppose you're tied to the functions that would allow you to have a kid, and the options that we have now were not available at the time. So in a way, perhaps that played some role in at least my trying to deny who I was and trying to pursue heterosexual relationships in order to see whether that would be possible.
And so now that you are a father, how has that changed your life?
Beyond imagining, really. Apart from the obsession with lack of sleep and trying to strategize about how you can get more sleep. I've just become a lot more connected with my emotions. I feel so much more joyful. It's great to be reconnected with that innocence that you had as a child when you're playing with him and you're seeing things through his eyes. It's really a beautiful thing.
And he's only a couple of years old?
Yeah, he's just 2.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Seeing him learn language and acquire vocabulary is beautiful. And just seeing his little personality come out, good fun. But it changes your perspective on everything.
Does it change your priorities?
Absolutely. You know, the stresses that I faced at work and the little day-to-day irritants, they don't really have the same gravitas as they used to. There's other things that are more important.
And are your family, you know, are your mum and dad happy grandparents? And,
yes.
And they've embraced the whole family?
Absolutely, yes. We have conversations at least once a week with FaceTime and Skype so that they can see him. They burst into tears the first time he said granny and granddad and all those sorts of things.
That's so sweet.
Yeah, it's quite.
And your partner's family, do they see your child, or, you know, do they play a grandparent role?
Yes, they do, with me not around.
So are you not a part of that picture at all?
No, not really.
Okay. How does that feel?
It's just the way it is, I think, unfortunately, in this society, maybe. It's just what is most appropriate for the culture. And also for my child at the moment. But I think there has to be some resolution at some point.
And what do you think are the best and most challenging parts of being a parent? So what's the best part?
The best part is seeing him grow up and seeing him develop language and the joy that he feels at learning about the world and animals and cars and all of those things are just wonderful to see.
And what's the biggest challenge? And you can't say sleep because you've already mentioned that, so I want the second biggest challenge. What's the second biggest challenge?
I think it's planning for the future and the responsibility. You know, I can't just pack up my job and I have to make sure that I'm caring for him and planning for his future. It's not a challenge that I don't willingly take on. It's just something that I'm very conscious of, making sure that...
yes, it's a big shift, isn't it, parenthood?
Yeah.
When you and your husband and your son go out and about in Hong Kong, do you face any discrimination or is it fine?
Our community is quite multicultural and we've been really well accepted in the neighborhood and amongst our friends. We've never had any ugly looks or people say anything to us in that community. And even in the wider community, there's never really been any negativity. The things that I found awkward have been largely coming from ignorance or where they don't recognize a gay couple. They just assume it's a husband and a son and an uncle or a friend. And, for example, going to the supermarket when we're checking out together, the supermarket teller will say to my husband, "Where's his mummy?" Or even directly to my son, asking him in Cantonese, "Where's your mummy?"
How do you deal with that? What do you say to your son, or what do you say to the teller? Do you educate her? Do you let it slip by?
It depends whether often we let it slip by. Sometimes we'll tell her that he doesn't have a mummy, and typically we don't really confront her on it. We've always been very open with our son on his birth story and how he came to be with us. So I think he understands, or is developing an understanding of who his family is and how he came to be with us.
Well, that's really great. What do you say to someone who might say that a child needs a mum and a dad?
I say to them that families are about love, and child needs a dedicated, responsible, nurturing environment from one person, or ideally two. And the science shows that it doesn't make any difference the sex of those two carers. One good parent is better than two compromised parents. I think there is no difference.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think I couldn't have said it better. So thank you. I think that's so important. That's such a great message to get out there. Families come in all mixes and all blends. There's so many different types of families, and that's what we really do need to be aware of. And promoting tolerance and diversity is so important, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you could go back to your teenage self and speak to young Robert, what would you say to him?
I would have told him to come out earlier. I feel that I wasted many years struggling with myself, and I realized how fulfilled I am just accepting who I am, and it would have been great if I'd been able to find that in myself earlier.
Did you ever feel suicidal as a young teenager or wanting to harm yourself?
Well, I think my life with drugs and alcohol was perhaps on the same spectrum. It was definitely self-destructive behavior, and I never really considered suicide, but there was definitely some mental health issues that I was dealing with, and I was medicating myself with these substances.
So do you think by suppressing your sexuality and not coming to terms with being gay that you suffered from depression or anxiety?
Yes, I think so. I think it creates a lot of psychic pressure that manifests itself, and it can lead to depression when you don't feel that you're able to be yourself or can't find a way to be yourself.
Yeah, that makes sense. How do you think schools and parents can play a role in encouraging tolerance and diversity amongst the next generation?
I think schools and parents play an essential role in helping kids come to terms with who they are. I think schools are custodians of that person at a transformative part of their lives and have an enormous responsibility to ensure that they're safe. And parents should also be promoting a positive environment that supports their children and not shying away from talking about issues of sex and orientation in a positive way. I feel, unfortunately, schools can be a very scary place for LGBT kids, ones that they can find very threatening if these issues are not addressed. And I think it's the responsibility of schools and parents to ensure that there's no space for any negativity around LGBT people and issues, and to address any discrimination that they see or hear actively.
That's so important, and I hope for the future of young LGBT people that we're really moving rapidly in that direction, and that people do stand up and they do stop the bullying and they do educate and promote, as I've said before, diversity and understanding and acceptance. Do you think that the media has a positive or negative impact on LGBTQ youth?
Both. I think we're seeing a lot more positive role models in the media now, which is important. We're also seeing there being more coverage of LGBT issues, and it's becoming more part of daily conversations. But I also think it can have a very negative effect. In Hong Kong, for example, the Chinese media shy away from reporting LGBT issues, and I think that disenfranchises and is a level of discrimination really against LGBT people in the country. Social media, I think, is a scary and potentially dangerous place for LGBTQ youth, but it is also a way for them to connect with the community and find support. support that they may not get within their own towns or families.
I think there's so many coming out videos on YouTube, and that's one of the first places I think many young people go to feel like they belong to a group and feel like they have a community. And I think it can be a huge support.
Yeah.
And it's something you wouldn't have had as a teenager.
No.
You know, it'd be interesting to think if you had all this access to the role models and social media and what's going on in the news and people like Ellen and Caitlyn Jenner and all those people in the media, would that have made that easier for you to come out when you were younger?
I think just being able to have a conversation about it and see people talking about it, it may have made it easier.
And I think it's important, isn't it, that there's conversations and it's being taught in schools and it's part of the personal social health education program. It's important, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's it's like a key element in our decision about which school to send our kid to. It's really making sure that it's a diverse and inclusive environment, that he will be safe in, and we as parents can be actively involved in his education.
Yes, I would say that that's so important. And thankfully, there are some great schools in Hong Kong that are very inclusive and, you know, very supportive of anyone in the community, no matter what their race, gender or sexuality. And that's something I feel very proud of in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, I wish it would disseminate to all schools in Hong Kong, but I guess we're slowly trying to educate people and get the word out. So that's great. What advice would you give to any young person who's struggling with their sexuality and is feeling alone and isolated?
I would say that they're not alone. There are places online that they can go to see that they're not alone. There are communities such as the It Gets Better campaign that is really validating for kids that feel that they have no one to turn to.
That's a great campaign. Yeah.
And it does get better. And I think, you know, kids can often get lost in the day-to-day of being in a school or not having friends who understand or know them, but realizing that one day they will be in a community that they can choose and find people that have similar views and thoughts to them. That's good for them to know. I would also perhaps advise them not to obsess too much about today and think about making them a better person for tomorrow and focusing on their studies, reading, looking after themselves, you know, looking after their bodies and their minds so that they're an attractive,
well-rounded, interesting. Yeah. I think that's so true. And also one more thing that I would add to that is giving back to the community, trying to make a difference and being a global citizen, because that I think also makes people feel a whole lot better about themselves if they're helping others.
Yeah, that's good point.
But I think everything you said is really, really important and really valid. And I hope anyone listening out there who is feeling unsure about their sexuality or worried about the future or wanting to have a conversation about gender or sexuality, that they reach out to somebody that they know will be supportive, whether it be a teacher or a parent or an older sibling or somebody in the community that they trust, a coach or someone in the church or whatever. Yeah. You know, there are lots of really supportive adults out there that can help guide you and support you.
Absolutely. Fine. Be safe first.
Yes. And can you tell me a bit more about what you mean by be safe?
Well, I think you need to make sure that you do come out in a safe and supportive environment. If your parents are not going to be able to do that, then you should wait, or you should find someone, an adult that you can trust and confide in to support you if you need it.
Good advice. In an ideal world, what would the future of LGBTQ people look like in your eyes?
Well, I hope that world would not have the term LGBTQ, where the shape of my genitals and who and how I love is meaningless, and there wouldn't be any term for differentiating between people.
So it's just complete acceptance and no difference.
Yeah.
That's lovely. And on that note, we'll finish. Thank you so much, Robert, for meeting me today. It's been awesome talking to you. Thanks a lot.
Pleasure.
So that brings us to the end of another Hong Kong Confidential podcast. I'm Jules Hannaford. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you'll be with me again next week. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please can you go to iTunes to rate and review it? I would really appreciate your feedback. You can email me at jules@hongkongconfidential.net, and you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Hong Kong Confidential. If you'd like to hit me up on Twitter, it's at Jules Hannaford. I would love to hear from you.